Trump was sworn into office yesterday, and he's already taken actions that could impact your VA disability benefits. In today's video, I'm going to highlight 3 executive orders that could impact the VA and impact your VA disability benefits. We're going to talk about his executive orders regarding federal hiring freeze, a regulatory freeze, and his return to in-person work for federal employees. I'm attorney Greg Rada, and I've been practicing VA disability benefits for over a decade.
My name is Victoria Rada. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start with the the hiring freeze executive order. This order halts hiring of all federal civilian employees across the executive branch. There are certain exceptions, but what is the intent behind the hiring freeze?
Sure. So one of President Trump's goals is to reduce government spending, and this is an immediate way to do it. By hiring less people, the federal government will spend less money. And you guys can read these executive orders on the whitehouse.gov website. So it's whitehouse.gov/presidential-actions. And you can read these in person, and I'm sharing them on the screen right now. This is the executive order for the hiring freeze. And so you'll see here that as part of this freeze, no federal civilian position that is vacant at noon on January 20th, the date President Trump was sworn in, may be filled, and no new positions may be created except as otherwise provided down below. So basically there's no federal hiring going on right now. If there is open jobs, VA is not allowed to fill them, and they're not allowed to create any new job postings.
So, this is really just like a budget issue. What are the negative ramifications from this order that you foresee on veterans?
One of the biggest problems with VA is the volume of claims and appeals they have to work. Mm-hmm. This is most noticeable at the Board of Veterans Appeals, with currently around a 3-year backlog to get board decisions. And it's simply because there's not enough judges to decide cases. And so a hiring freeze is not good as far as timely processing appeals. And, there's just more and more VA cases every year, and VA needs to be able to hire employees to process those cases. Otherwise, the backlogs are just going to start increasing because there's not enough people to work them.
The order does explain that this is temporary and will be lifted once they come up with a full workforce plan that they're going to implement. But as of right now, there's no end date to this. It's just out there as a freeze until further notice, correct?
Yeah, there's no end date. You'll notice there is an exception here. It says nothing in this memorandum shall adversely impact the provision of Social Security, Medicare, or veterans benefits. And so I'm hopeful that the VA secretary can use this to exempt the VA from this hiring freeze. But it's really vague. Like, you could interpret this sentence as saying, the hiring freeze can't impact like the delivery or the payments of people already receiving benefits. Mm-hmm. And so the administration can say, as long as you're still paying people who are already receiving benefits, you can't hire anyone new. But it's vague. It's just one sentence that it says it shall not adversely impact the provision of veterans benefits. And there's just different ways to interpret what that actually means. I'm hopeful that the secretary advocates for veterans and says, hey, we need more employees to process these claims so that vets aren't waiting multiple years to get decisions, and that the VA can avoid this hiring freeze. But that remains to be seen.
All right, let's talk about the next one that I think has a bigger potential impact on veterans and VA functioning, which is the regulatory freeze. So this halts new rules and regulations until they've been reviewed and approved by the current department heads or agency heads. So talk a little bit about this and what you think the impact is.
Yeah, so the VA operates through regulations. It's 38 CFR is all the regulations for how the VA is run, how disabilities are rated, and probably one of the biggest pieces of regulation in the 38 CFR is the rating schedule. And VA continually updates and makes changes to the rating schedule, and the rating schedule sets forth the criteria for how a veteran can get certain ratings. And so the potential biggest impact right now is a lot of people have been waiting waiting for the new PTSD rating criteria. And as of the last update from VA, that was supposed to go into effect either Q4 of last year or Q1 of this year. And so that new PTSD rating criteria may be further delayed by this executive order because everything's on hold right now. And so I don't know. We'll see. Everything's on hold. People are wanting the new PTSD rating criteria because VA did a study saying that it would actually be easier for vets to get 100% rating under PTSD. So I know a lot of people have been anticipating that, but this might further delay implementation of that new rating criteria for PTSD. Again, the hope here is that our new Secretary of Veterans Benefits, advocates on behalf of VA and says, hey, this regulation has been in process for years. It's ready to go. Can we publish it? And the administration, tells them yes, and that gets put out. But we'll keep everyone posted on the status of the new PTSD rating criteria as we get updates.
And the third executive order, the return to in-person work. So this is a mandate that requires federal employees to end their remote work and return to their office full time. What's the reasoning here? What's the impact?
This one upsets me the most. I don't know.
More than the regulatory?
Yeah. So I think with the regulatory freeze, I think there's a good chance, VA explains to the administration that this new regulation has been developed over years and the administration approves it. And I think the administration's focus on the regulatory freeze is more business sided.
What do you mean?
I mean, they don't want new regulations that hinder business.
Okay.
And this is a VA benefit regulation. And so I really don't think they're going to care about VA's regulations.
Okay.
They're more interested in making it easier to get permitting to, drill an oil well, those types of regulations. So that one doesn't really concern me as much. This one annoys me and does concern me too. We've been remote for over a decade. I work better from home. I know a lot of people that work better from home. And so they're phrasing this as this is like an efficiency thing, which I do not think it is. I think this is flowing from Elon Musk trying to reduce the cost of government. And I mean, he outright said this by making employees return to in-person work in an office. They expect 20% of federal employees are just going to quit instead of returning. And so I think this is a method to trim the size of federal employees.
Does he think that 20% of current employees aren't needed?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what he did with Twitter. He cut 90% of their employees and continued to operate it the same way. And I think he takes the same viewpoint on the federal government. And so that's where I think this is flowing from. And this hinders VA a lot. I don't know what the exact number is. I know it's over 50% of VA benefit employees, not the healthcare people, but the VA benefits work remotely. It's helpful for VA because it allows VA to hire outside of geographical locations of regional offices. Here in Colorado, the Denver regional office is, 20 minutes away from us in Lakewood. And so by allowing remote work, the Denver regional office can hire employees up in Fort Collins or down in Colorado Springs or out in Grand Junction, people that can't commute an hour and a half, 2 hours each way to Denver. So you're limiting the pool of employees that you can have by requiring in-person work. And, everything that a VA benefits employee does is just computer work. There's no need for it to be done in the office. So this makes me nervous because I think if VA has to require every employee to come into work, there's going to be a lot of VA employees who quit. Job satisfaction within the VA is terrible. High turnover. There's lots of burnout. And by making people, suddenly add, a commute on each end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot that just, quit. And the effect of VA employees quitting is that claims and appeals are just going to take longer. So yeah, to say the least, I don't like this order. There's a tweet from Elon today saying it's about fairness. Guys working in a factory on a car line have to come into work, so it's not fair for other people to not come into work. I think that's an absurd comparison. Every job is different. I'm not required to go work and do my VA work on an oil rig just because, a guy who works on an oil rig has to do that.
Right.
Every job is different. It's not about fairness. And if they were really concerned about efficiency and cost savings, let's get rid of the physical offices. I guess one of the concerns is people don't work from home. I'm 1,000% more productive when I'm at home and I'm not distracted by coworkers and going to lunch and walking around the office and taking breaks and talking to people. And VA tracks everything that a VA employee does. They're incentivized to work. So every time they touch a case, they get a point. And
yeah.
so
By
VA
quantity.
knows,
Right.
the work product that people are putting out. And if someone's working from home and they're well below the average of where everyone else is, that they're easily identifiable and they could be fired. So yeah, again, this makes me nervous because I think VA employees are potentially going to quit. I mean, a lot of the employees are nowhere near a physical office for them to actually go into work. And so people are going to quit, and the people that are going to suffer are vets because cases are going to take longer because there's less people working at VA. So yeah, I mean, and like a lot of the board judges, the board is in Washington, D.C. That's where the board's office is. Judges are spread out all over the country. They'll probably give exemptions to them because they're higher up.
But fairness.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell. I guess we'll see what happens in the coming months, but I would hope that we don't lose 20% of VA employees.
That would be bad. Again, claims increase every single year. You need people to process them. There's no reason for someone to just come sit in an office and do that when they can do the exact same thing at home.
I mean, I think everybody works differently. Like you saying, you're so much more efficient and effective in your work at home. Some people are obviously better in an office setting. We all just know how we work well. And we can decide that on our own. A lot of the people that are remote workers because that works for them.
Yeah. And again, VA can identify if people aren't working.
Yeah.
They track very closely the output of each employee. And so, if someone's at home and they're not working, VA knows about it. That person, should be fired. I mean, the other issue is even before COVID, VA had a lot of remote work, and they had a hybrid thing where people would share offices. Like someone would work in an office 2 days and someone else would work in it another 2 days. There's literally not enough office space for every VA employee to return to a physical office.
Well, I wonder if this will evolve with, them realizing what was before, because I read in one of these that just the goal is to get back to kind of pre-COVID times. So I wonder if it will evolve to something like that. Maybe it will be a hybrid situation.
Yeah, it might be. But even that, I think hamstrings VA because, again, it limits your pool of employees to only people who physically live close enough to an office.
Right.
Right now when VA, needs a new rater, they can hire anywhere in the continental United States. VA has been chronically understaffed. And so it's hard to get good VA employees. And, this potentially is going to make it even harder.
All right. Well, those are the 3 executive orders. With the coming days, as more orders are issued, if they are relevant to VA disability, we will do videos on those and go over them. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. But thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us. And we'll keep you posted on any future updates. And we'll let you know how these executive orders play out. Just because they were signed by President Trump yesterday doesn't mean that they immediately, the hiring freeze immediately goes into effect. But, people aren't returning to in-person work tomorrow. This still has to play out. And I'm sure there'll be exemptions and negotiations. And so we'll keep everyone posted on how this ends up happening and what really happens. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.